know what else?
Oh, I love that. Yeah, we're gonna cheat. We're gonna cheat.
I don't know why.
He's got it. He's got it. All right.
I don't know why. It works at Tucson Comic Con.
Yeah.
Don't know why it's not.
It's just. I think it's just being persnickety.
It is absolutely being persnickety, and this is a real bear. So, are you going to be part of the conversation? You are on camera.
Yes. Okay. Sweet. All right.
Let's start over. Right. Hello. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Steampunk 101. I'm here with my wonderful chums, Captain Azzar and Mathematica.
Hello.
And we are going to talk a little bit about the steampunk community and getting started in steampunk, different resources and events and ways to get started with your costume and all of those wonderful things. Captain Azzar and dear Mathematica and I all got into steampunk in different ways, and we sort of met through steampunk and cosplay, so we're going to talk a little bit about our adventures, our experiences today. Sound good?
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Great.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
Well, I think since you have been our steampunk matron the longest, you should go first.
Thank you, Captain Azzar. Take two. So, my name is Madame Askew, and I have been doing steampunk for ages and ages, just eons. I'm a time traveler, so it's hard to keep track. But initially, I got involved in steampunk because I'm an avid reader, and I was enjoying these wonderful steampunk books. And my former affianced was also very keen on steampunk books, and we were chatting about books one day and looking for more steampunk reads. And I went on to the etherwebs to do like a little search-a-rooney to see what was out there. And imagine my delight and surprise, I discovered that there's an entire community of makers and artists that's going around this genre of books. So most subgenres start typically with music. It's unusual to find one that starts with books. And it's really fun because steampunk is both a sort of movement as well as a fandom. And so there's some interesting overlaps there. And as I was doing this sort of search, I discovered that there are people making their own clothes and their own props and art and music and all sorts of wonderful things. And so that was amazing, and I was completely smitten and immediately wanted to start making my own steampunk attire. And also I discovered about 2 months before it happened in this search, so I know when I was searching, because I remember when the event happened, I discovered that there was going to be a steampunk convention here in Tucson called Wild Wild West Con. It was the very first one that happened, and I had 2 months to get together costumes for both myself and my affianced, and that was the start of all shenanigans. What about you, Captain Azzar?
Let's see. I started with steampunk kind of in the same way. I am a SCA flunky, so I came by way of the SCA. I found that wasn't really my jam. There were a little too many rules for me. I definitely put the punk and steampunk. I kind of like want to go against the grain, and I didn't like having all these rules about what I could or couldn't do. So I really liked the idea of steampunk. Steampunk seemed like it was very open, and they actually encouraged the creativity to kind of do your own thing. And then I kind of did the same thing. I was like, well, are there other people here in town that might be interested in this? And then I found out that there was a book club at Antigone Books. And then there was also, I also am a huge Browncoat Serenity fan. So there was Can't Stop the Serenity that used to be at Tucson at the Fox. And I went to that and I kind of met some folks, but then I found out there was a book club, and that's when I met you and all the wonderful people at the Tucson Steampunk. And I've kind of been hooked ever since. And then I dragged my lovely spouse along for the ride, who's actually monitoring this video right now. So that was kind of how I got into it. And like I said, I liked the idea of it being kind of almost a counterculture, that, you know, it was about inclusivity and helping people and kind of being a more welcoming community. And I really liked that idea, that we were kind of going against the grain, and that we liked the Victorian value, like the Victorian aesthetic, but not Victorian values. And that we liked that, you know, Edwardian type of styling, but not necessarily the values. And then that was another thing that I really liked, because then we were just kind of cherry picking the things we liked. And then we're like talking about the things we didn't, and acknowledging it, but not making it the sole experience that we had. So that was what I really liked about steampunk, and why it keeps me here. And Wild Wild West Con, I mean, I just fell in love. So yeah.
It's a home show.
I know, it's our home show.
Oh, right, we're going to pass.
That works. Excellent. So I don't actually remember when I first stumbled onto steampunk.
You're like a Pokemon, you evolved.
Pretty much, actually. And I'm very okay with this comparison, because there's been a lot of that, especially the last, like, 5-10 years of my life, and I am all for it. So I think I initially stumbled across steampunk maybe with books, or it might have been with the artwork. Like I said, I honestly don't remember, but I remember thinking, this is really cool. I want to find more about this. And like kind of kept dabbling here and there, read books, and it's like, okay, this is really cool. I like this. Like, this has an aspect of fantasy to it, which I adore, because if anyone knows me, I love the fantasy genre. Like, that is my jam. I cannot read enough books, cannot interact with enough of that genre. And so when I found steampunk, I'm like, ooh, I like this. Also, this is really cool looking. Like, all the artwork that I'm coming across is really awesome. And ladies in corsets, no complaints.
True.
Just saying.
True.
But like, the more that I've learned about it, the more I'm like, oh my gosh, there's this aspect of whimsy. But like you said, there's that inclusivity and the freedom to explore who you are and adopt some of these historical aspects, but also recognize, like, you know what? I don't like this aspect of history. I know that it's there, and I have to acknowledge it is there. That being said, I'm going to go this way with it and reclaim it, make it my own, and make it better and more welcoming, and so that everyone is able to find joy in it.
I think the historical fantasy portion of steampunk is very empowering, because it enables us to find joy in the things that we like about the past, the aesthetics, the fashion, the discovery, the sense of discovery, some of the art that happened, while being able to critique some of the, systematic problems like colonialism, imperialism, its bosom chum. all of
they go hand in hand.
It really enables a lot of terrible historical events to happen. So we can talk about it, and as you say, we can investigate it, critique it, without making it the whole thing. So we can still have a really wonderful, fun experience at the same time. We're saying, you know what? We do not buy into those values. What we are about is imagining what if the world had been better, and then trying to reflect that in our creative endeavors. Right?
And I think for a lot of folks who microphones. I think also a great thing about that is that not only are we interpreting a future that could have been, but I think that for a lot of steampunks and the culture itself, we're also looking at what it can be. Like, we're fostering that. We may not be seeing it in other spaces in our life, But in this space, we're making sure they're being inclusive and kind and understanding and respectful to one another and understanding that there's differences, but we're putting that onto the world. And maybe it's a small space, but then we're taking that to bigger conventions, we're taking it to other spaces. And I think that that really is, we're doing our part to maybe this past that we wish was, now we're trying to make it into the future that may be.
And I see some steampunks coming around.
Oh, yay!
Dressed up. So lovely. It's very exciting to have some new friends join us.
Yeah.
And so hopefully they will see the door and come on in.
Yeah. That'd be great.
Pause while they get in here. Yay! Oh, we love to have new friends join us. Hello, friends. Hello. Welcome. Come in. We're late.
Oh, that's okay.
You're fantastic. Thank you. We're just talking about some of our experiences and getting started with steampunk. You
Yeah.
look so stunning.
Yes, you look very dapper. Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us. We do have a stream going on so that people can watch. You can't be here in person. It's sort of our habit, but we're so delighted to see both of you. Welcome. I'm Madame Askew.
I'm Captain Azzar.
And I'm not proud of it. And I am Miss Heavens to Betsy.
Oh, excellent.
And I'm let's see.
I ask myself that every day. Who am I today?
Yes.
Professor Principal Ogilvy Astronomer.
Astronomer.
Wow.
Fantastic. It's so wonderful to have you.
Oh, I
here.
love that. I love it.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't we meet at Tucson Comic Con?
No, we have not been, unfortunately.
Oh.
We always seem to have something else going on, but Wild WestCon, absolutely.
Yes, that's where we met you.
Yay.
Wonderful to have you here. Welcome, welcome. And you both look so dapper and stunning.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm not phoning it in, but I am being more comfortable because it's so hot.
It's hot.
Yes. And you did have your sip the tea this morning. So you kind of had to, scurry into the ether ship and come here. So yeah.
Popped into the new airship.
Popped into the airship. And so we were just going over how we got into steampunk. And then since we were talking about how dapper you both look, maybe we can segue into that, like
Yes,
costuming.
Costuming, wonderful.
Yeah.
So I'm a long time costumer, and costuming was a huge part of my steampunk experience. It was immediately what I got invested in, was making my own frocks. I was already sewing before I started steampunk. I'd been doing some different historical time periods. But steampunk was where I really found my costuming sort of blooming, and it really elevated. And one of the things I loved was the permission to play with historical fashion rather than be bound by it. So I think you can be as invested in the historical looks as you wish to be. You can go very hardcore, and honestly, I really do, because I do all the underpinnings, and I'm really invested in getting that silhouette just so. And I like to have lots of layers, so many layers, and I want to do
You
it
have
all.
absolutely the most amazing outfits I've ever seen.
Oh,
Yes.
Thank you. That is so kind. And I love teaching, so I also like to host classes now. And before the pandemic, we did fairly regularly. We did little workshops, and I used to host a thing called Tutorial Tuesday, where I would live stream on Tuesdays and do little weekly workshops, which that was a wonderful halcyon period, and I miss it. But also now we're doing more in-depth workshops, which is really fun. But that was, I think, my favorite thing, because I'd been doing, like you, I had spent some time in the SCA. I had been interested in Regency fashion. I'd done some mid-century and swing and all of that. And I was sort of getting intrigued by 18th century costuming. And all of these places are very much like, you need to do it like this. And I was like, well, those are very nice. And I like them, but I really wanted to go and add my own personal flair to it in steampunk. absolutely permitted me to do that. Well, I say permitted, but no one gives you permission in steampunk. There's not a canon. There's not like an overarching
Yeah.
authority. You do what you want, and that is one of my favorite things.
So, quick aside, when you said there's no canon, my thought didn't go to canon like this is like the establishing lore. My mind went to canon that goes boom. And so my brain went to, oh, of course there's no canon that goes boom. It's like, yes, you have the permission to do this. To be ridiculous and cheeky.
It announces it.
It would work. We have pew cannons.
Pew pew cannons. There's the cannons.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
You're allowed to make your costume with announcements in the cannon. Honestly, that's the move.
I love it. I love it.
Like, why is this not a thing?
Now we're getting ideas. I'm like, I don't know if the casino would like us putting that much glitter and confetti on the floor. You're right.
So Wild Wild West Con, if you bring cannons, please remember they should not have actual artillery, and they should be something that is easy to clean up. Sparkly unicorn.
Sparkly unicorns.
They do have Nerf feeling.
They do.
They
Oh,
also
I love the Nerf dueling. Yeah, I love the Nerf dueling.
No, and the gentleman who does Nerf dueling at Wild West Con comes all the way down from Canada to host it. Victor is a delight, and I know Victor has a steampunk persona name, and I'm absolutely drawing a blank. I'm so sorry, Victor, but he is such a wonderful human, and I love that part of the joy of this community is that it is global, and when we have our local steampunk convention, it's one of the biggest ones in the world, and so we get a wonderful influx of people coming from all over the globe to participate.
Yeah.
And we get to make friends and
Yeah.
have this far-reaching community.
Yeah. Yeah. Back on the costuming, I'm kind of a hybrid. I kind of do like, I'll take a lot of like modern aesthetics and then kind of maybe like upcycle them or add accessories to my stuff. But I am a sewist, so there are occasions where I'll do sewing. But I kind of, you know, when I first started out, it was definitely one of those where, what do I have in my closet? What can I do that make it more steampunk? You know, adding, if I add a pocket watch, could I wear a regular suit and maybe, you know, kind of do a hybrid of it, or a cool waistcoat? And then that's worked really well. I also like the fact that it's very freeing, that I don't necessarily have to wear feminine, you know, dresses and skirts and corsets. I can wear a more dandy outfit, and that's perfectly okay. And I kind of like the freedom of my clothing to be able to do either or, whatever suits me that day. I've talked about it numerous times that, you know, all of us have, you know, sometimes I have disabilities, I have arthritis, so there's some days where trying to get that corset on and trying to, you know, wear the beautiful fluffies is just like, oh, I don't think my body can take that today. You know what? I can take a waistcoat and some slacks. That's what I'm wearing.
You wear.
Yes.
So.
Yes. We're having a drink.
Oh, there it is. Sorry about that. There we go. I was ready to take it off and hand it to you, and I'm like,
Where did it go? That was hysterical.
cool.
As I
Now,
almost drop it.
You come to steampunk with a lot of skills and corsetry and a lot of fun stuff too.
Shenanigans, yes.
Yeah.
So I come to it from more of a cosplay and sewist background. I initially started out doing other styles of cosplay, dressing up as different characters, things like that. Did a couple Disney outfits, and then some just, I'm going to make up my own character. And I love doing my own interpretation of other characters. I don't necessarily enjoy doing screen accurate stuff. Major kudos to those who do, because like, oh my goodness, the amount of detail that goes into that is incredible. That's just not what brings me joy. And that's okay. And that's actually one of the nice things about steampunk is I can go, I like this character. Can I re-envision it in a steampunk way? Or like I came up with this wacky idea for a character, like, hey, if you had a dragon who's humanoid, who's also a pirate, what would that look like in a steampunk world? And I mean, this is how I actually came up with one of my more recent cosplays. And it's been so much fun exploring all of that. And you tend to take much more of a historically accurate look at things like silhouette wise than I do. But I still try to look at some of the old like historical fashion plates and things like that and go, okay, this is really, really cool. What aspects of this are my favorite things that I can incorporate into my own things? And then how can I put my own spin on it and turn it into kind of like a fantasy kind of thing? And I mean, I'm not in full costume right now. I'm kind of embracing the shapeshifter persona at the moment. I was a dinosaur earlier this morning, and now I'm the adventurer. But it's, yes, absolutely. And like Mathematica is a shapeshifter who tends to hang out as a dragon. But it's so much fun looking at it and going, oh, this is really cool. What of this can I bring into my costuming? Also, what crazy shenanigans can I get up to costuming wise that sometimes make me and my friends question my sanity, but then it's like, you know what, I'm going to do the thing anyways because it's going to make me happy.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I think that, well, I want to hear from both of you before I wax on too far. But I do think in the early days of steampunk, there was like a lot of discussion about what makes it steampunk. Is it steampunk enough? Well, I don't know if that counts as steampunk. It's not brown. Listen, brown is a delightful color, but they're all great colors. We can have all the colors. But I think what unifies it and what brings it together, because a little bit you look at steampunk and you go, I know it when I see it, because it's so vast and it's so, personal and unique. But the thing I think that really unites us is the fantastical element that we bring to our costume.
Yes.
Like whatever we're doing, there's a little bit of like play pretend and make up our own spin on it. So would you please share a little bit about some of your costuming adventures?
We got into steampunk about 8-9 years ago. Yeah. David Summers, dear friend of ours. My husband works with him on Kit Peak.
Oh,
Astronomer.
cool.
But
Oh,
he's an
that's really
amateur.
cool.
He has his own observatory at home. The works.
That's
But
amazing.
Dave is, as you know, maybe not all of the audience knows, is also a steampunk author.
Yes.
And he was talking about Wild Wild West Con. We got interested. We went in our muggle outfits, not knowing what to expect.
We had no idea.
No
Except we
idea.
go out there. Yeah, maybe a dozen people went out there. So we went out there and there were like a dozen.
Old Tucson was just flooded with them. And it was amazing. We got hooked on it immediately. It's been like pulling teeth to get this one to dress up for Halloween. So we don't do Halloween. But we were walking through a vendor stall and I was ahead of him. He said, what do you think of this? And he had taken a black brocade coachman's coat off of the rack. And I said, what do you mean? He said, I like this. Can I wear it? Oh, yes, you can. So that was the beginning. That was the first store-bought item. And I'm a self-taught sewist. I do not profess to be nearly the seamstress that you are, but I do enjoy it. And we had wanted to do Renaissance. And as you said, people can be very, very fussy. If it's not completely historically accurate, don't bother. We don't want it. Steampunk embraces everything. There is no wrong way to do steampunk.
That's right.
If you just want to wear a fun t-shirt or a silly hat or glue a cog or a sprocket on something, fine, you're in the club.
Yeah.
If you want to go full out, that's great too, and everything in between. There are no limits and no rules. So I started envisioning what I could do. I bought a few patterns, and my style is to cannibalize. I'll take a bit of this pattern and sleeve from here and a skirt from here. And we tend to like the more Victorian style, not completely authentic. You know, my bustle doesn't have a cage, but you know, I enjoy making things. This is one of my favorite outfits. This is my Scarlett O'Hara dress because the paisley fabric used to be my living room drapes.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that.
So I just like, you know, picking up scraps of fabric, whatever I have. I've made all of my clothes, most of his, and I'll let him tell you about the walking stick because that's his pride and joy. But that's how we got into it. And I think the part that I like best is coming up with my persona. I am Miss Heavens to Betsy. I am named after my great aunt, Heavens to Murgatroyd, who owns the Heavens to Murgatroyd Finishing School for girls who should be finished. And I am now the headmistress. So I have a lot of fun with that.
That's amazing. I love it.
That's my favorite part.
That's so good.
Lady that, and no, I'm a school teacher.
I love it. And the world needs good school teachers, no matter what age you're in.
Absolutely, absolutely. So here we are.
Well, and I think you hit on something really delightful because in many historical costuming venues, especially when you get into, and this is not a dig, by the way, this is not a critique, but things like the SCA, they really fixate on the upper crust, the aristocracy, and your journey through that organization is to get titles. And whilst I know there are some people who do research on the middle class, the working class, the lower classes in those spaces, most people are doing aristocrats. And so I think it's really cool and super fun in steampunk that lots of people are like, no, I'm an engineer, I stoke the boilers, I'm a maker, I'm a builder, I'm a doer. Having a title and being an aristocrat is not, you can do it, there's nothing wrong with it, but most of us are like, I don't need that, I don't need to be an
Sometimes
aristocrat.
the other stuff is much more fun.
Yeah, it's so lovely. And I love your backstory. It's so funny and so charming. We're planning to do a character development workshop in a couple of months, and I hope you'll come back and join us for that.
Oh yeah, that would be great.
So much fun.
That would be a lot of fun, absolutely.
But please tell us about your beautiful walking stick.
Yes.
Like my dear lovely said that when we went to the first day, I had not really expected because I had an idea of seeing what it was like. And a very good idea. And when we got there, it's like, well, this is great. this is just our sort of thing. Because I've always been science fiction fantasy fan since I was small. And I've always been interested in astronomy. And there are so many images of astronomers from the Victorian period. So you were a gentleman at the telescope. And the gentleman's scientist sort of thing just was very effective. One of my all-time fiction heroes is Captain Nemo. One of my all-time real heroes is Percival Lowell, who kind of the Lowell Missouri player. And who was so interested in Mars. And the other part of my name is, of course, astronomer Ogilvy, who sort of met his end in War of the Worlds. So I've always been a huge fan of Verne and Wells. And there's nothing that is more fun in steampunk than that period, because it was the transition between steam and more modern things of balloons. And it's just the best. So, and it's a lot of fun to combine the two. It's like, this is just copper and telescope. But there are some other things in here, lights, and there's a little, if you can't see where you're going at night.
Oh, that's so good. So it's beautiful and functional.
Actually,
I love that.
the crystal, so it's more fun at night. So you can change colors. And
Oh, that's so cool.
It's just a lot of fun. And it's something where if you want to do things like this, you can do anything you want.
Yes.
And from simple to, I've seen just some of the more amazing things that some of the steampunk enthusiasts have made. And it's just a great thing. I really enjoy it. I've never been in costume in a whole lot.
Mhm.
We went to Steampunk, and that was lucky. It was great.
But Wild West Con is so, I mean, listen, I love all the steampunk conventions. They are all wonderful gems in their own right. But Wild West Con is right here. It's the original show I went to. It's my home show. And I think that they have just this incredible vendor area with so many fantastic artisans there with props and hats and accessories and costumes. And you can come there in the day in your, sort of mundane, everyday, modern attire and leave at the end of the day completely kitted.
Yes.
Yes.
And it's so much fun getting to talk to the vendors and hear about all the artwork, and it's just amazing. Yes.
And so many of them are not local.
Right.
They come from all over the country. And as you said, Canada, I know there's some folks that have come from the UK. So you meet a lot of really nice, fun, interesting people.
Yeah, and I think that typically, by and large, what I've experienced as steampunk is that people are really joyful and they want to welcome newcomers in. Of course, any community can have its bad seats, its gatekeepers. You can find them. I just personally find it more amusing in steampunk because but how do you do that? There's not a single canon. There's not a single IP. Which book are you using to be your benchmark for what is steampunk? Are you using Gale character, or are you using William Gibson, or maybe you're using Sherry Priest? Who's your benchmark? Are you using P. Jenny Clark? But those are four incredibly different points on the steampunk map. So who are you using to be your
Because your idea of steampunk might not be exactly the same as
exactly?
mine. But that's great.
Yes.
That's actually wonderful because
Yes.
you get more variety, you get more enthusiasm, you get more buy-in, and everybody can have a good time, and we can admire everyone else's style and pick up a few pointers. I love the hat.
Thank you.
I have a pattern for that type of hat.
This is Azzarama. They actually make these hats.
Oh,
But yeah, this is a great style of hat too. That's another thing I love about the costumes and steampunk.
cool.
We love hats.
Yes.
Kind of just throw a hat on it and you start to feel steampunk. It's like you have this wonderful coachman's hat you're wearing. Did you cover it yourself or did it come that
No,
way?
it came this way, but I did make the hat band and my
Oh, it's
little
very
Yeah.
fetching. I love that.
I love
mascot
that.
here.
Yeah, it's so good. Hats are everything. I think I just love them.
One thing about steampunk that's really enjoyable for me is men don't wear hats anymore. And since the 1960s, when we were
Yeah.
steampunk can wear anything, and so I have a collection of hats now where I never had a hat.
Yes.
So it's a lot of fun. And so the guy on the guy's side, there's a whole range of things you can do. But I really like the peacock aspect because men today, if you're really dressed up, it's black and white.
Yeah.
But go back to the Victorian era when really dressed, and that's a kind of an attractive aspect to me because it's a lot more involved.
Yes.
Yes.
And
Yes.
especially with steampunk, you can take the basic things and then just go for it.
Yeah.
So, steampunk is so creative. That's the if you have a creative bent, steampunk pulls you right in.
Yes.
You can, one of the great things about it is the making aspect. So that if you want something and you can, this would be a really cool thing, and nobody makes it, then oh, could I make it myself?
Absolutely.
So, it's more fun to do that, especially from the gentlemanly side of things, and the not so gentlemanly side. So.
No, I think you are hitting on something that's really wonderful, and you were talking about this earlier, Captain Azzar. And I'm just going to do this thing where we pass the microphone so that we all. Do you still have that?
I have this one.
Yep. So you often dress as a dandy, not all the time, but often. I appreciate, because I love a dandy. My partner in performing, my best friend in the universe, the Grand Arbiter. I dress him and he accepts my choice. He's a very good sport.
It's because you have such good taste.
You also, it's because I'm the one stitching, so But he's a wonderful dandy. We love to elevate that dandy experience. And of course, one is not required to be a dandy, but you have the space to do it, which is so fun. Because you're right, in modern times, men's wear more masculine styles. They're in a very narrow range. In the 19th century, they discovered synthetic dyes, and they were like, if I can make it eye-bleedingly bright, that's what I'm going to do.
Yes. Yeah. And I think it makes it very easy. Like you said, like you can get a very nice cravat or an ascot, and you can take like this one. This is like I think I got this at like Burlington Coat Factory. It's an actually 3-piece suit. And so it's just a plain standard modern suit. But then when I put a cravat on, or if I put a bow tie, and then I maybe add like a pocket watch and a hat, and boom, there you go. Now it's converted from a modern suit to steampunk, to more of a Victorian era. And then there's been times, like for me, I like to play with it. I'll put a very frilly collar on it, or I've even worn my chatelaine with my actual suit, and kind of like this changing and using things that as I like, and maybe like non-conforming ways, maybe not necessarily strictly feminine or strictly masculine, but you can kind of do like this creative bend on it, and everyone's okay with that. Everyone's like, oh, I love what you did there. I love that cravat. I love that bow tie. Professor Azzar, he likes to wear ties. He likes wearing ties. And what we do is we kind of take that tie and just kind of do the bow a little differently, make it look like it's cravat-esque. And then you can kind of, still use a traditional tie, but a modern tie. And you can just kind of put a bend on it, put a nice pin on it, and boom, there you go. So I think accessories sometimes are the way to go, especially when you're starting out. You don't have to necessarily, you can go to the vendor hall and kit yourself out, but you can do baby steps. And also like with, your personas. I didn't have a persona for the first 5 years I was in steampunk. I just kind of loved dressing up, loved doing all the stuff, jumped in feet first. And then later on, it just kind of happened organically. I know that you and the Grand Arbiter are wonderful about creating personas and giving I always say like monikers. Thank you. I was like, the word is on the tip of my tongue. You guys love doing monikers, and sometimes it happens organically, or like you said, you have an idea. There's certain things that you love, and you're like, this is what I want to do. I want to pay homage to these wonderful characters or actual persons, and you want to pay homage to them. And so you're like, this is what I'm going to do. This is going to be my character. And you can do that because, like you said, there really isn't a canon. So it wasn't like, well, they all have to be aeronauts or like that. And so it's kind of one of those that I think that works out really great. I know for me, I remember I asked you, I said, I think it's time now, 5 years. I think it's time that I come up with a persona. And we kind of tossed it out. I have a background in my 4 generations of my family were military. I myself, I was medically disqualified, but I did want to join the military. And so it kind of came out organically, like, okay, we'll make you captain. And also, since I'm usually the one like trying to keep our proverbial ducks in a row, and
You're the chaos wrangler.
I'm the chaos wrangler, so it made sense being a captain, the behind the scenes, and it kind of happened organically. But I love that. I love that aspect of steampunk, that you can come up with whatever you want. And if you decide that day you're not, it's okay too. We have plenty of people that when they're wearing this outfit, it's this persona. If they're wearing this outfit, it's a different persona. And then there's some days where I love the fact that captains have now become Like even wearing caftans on Sundays has become a thing where we're like, after you did convention and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so exhausted. I really don't know if I could put that corset on one more day. You know what? I'm going to wear a caftan and wear a fabulous hat. And you know what? That's steampunk. It's fine.
Ask me about caftans. And why they are very essential 19th century garments. Mathematica, your name, and is a little bit my fault. Would you like to talk about?
Oh, do tell.
Would you like to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So, a little bit of background. I am a complete nerd, both in terms of like science fiction, fantasy, but also in terms of science. And like I come from a family of scientists. My dad is a mathematician. My mom is a doctor. I'm a doctor myself, just not a physician, doctor of physical therapy, but I also dearly love math, and almost minored in math when I was in undergrad. Get me started about differential equations and I could go on for a while.
I love that.
And eigenvalues, and like my dad would be so proud right now. But we were at Wild Wild West Con and we were doing teapot racing, and I had to abscond to the ether temporarily to go acquire some supplies, and then came back, and they're like, Mathematica, we need someone to tally the numbers and to crunch the numbers. And so I was helping to crunch numbers for the scores for teapot racing. And I forget if it was you or the Grand Arbiter that initially called me
I
Mathematica.
think it was the Grand Arbiter.
Okay.
No, you know what? I know he's the one who came up with Cruncher of Numbers.
Okay.
I can't remember which one of us came up with the name.
Either way, that's the event that it came about, and it has since stuck, and like it has become a running joke that I am the cruncher of numbers and I eat them for snacks.
Yes.
And especially if I can find dice, those are prime snacks. And so and Mathematica is a shapeshifter who tends to hang out in a dragon, in a lair that she has built to have like reading nooks and like a little tabletop gaming area with lots of dice, extra ones that she can eat as snacks, and like a chalkboard that is covered with equations that she's trying to figure out, and is a shapeshifter. And sometimes she's in human form, sometimes she's in dragon form. And so this
Also,
is
I did not realize to the degree that you had developed
the character. Oh yes.
I love that so much. That's so
Oh yes. Well, and like this little lair that Mathematica hangs out in would also be somewhere where Sarah would love to hang out in.
Well, and I think part of your story and part of your story as well is the way in which steampunk is a very natural intersection of STEAM. So science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics.
Yes.
And so you hear a lot about STEM in some circles, very important. I'm pro-STEM, all right? I'm in favor of science and math. But also, I'm an artist, and I love being able to play this intersection of them. And I think there's a lot of opportunity to show people how much fun science and engineering and math and technology really can be. You were talking about how this was such a cool era of discovery in terms of astronomy and things, that we were really on the cusp of this kind of grand revolution in the sciences, and that you got to sort of play in that area of it with steampunk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the life events was when my mother, I was 7 years old, and took me to an observatory in Denver. It was owned by the University of Denver. It was built in 1894. It's grand telescope. And if you put this thing in a steampunk movie, it would perfectly fit.
Oh, cool.
So I was imprinted, I think, and I've been just crazy about astronomy ever since then, and telescopes.
Yeah.
So when I heard steampunk, I thought, this is perfect, especially for the science end of it, because there's not that many things in fantasy that really, you can really weave science into as much as you can see. It's such an important part of it.
Yeah, and you can go pretty hard science fiction with steampunk, and pretty like fantastical.
Yeah.
And in the early days, which was like 20 years ago, so steampunk's been around for a while, but like the culture that's grown up around it is absolutely more modern. But in those early days, people were like, if it does not have hard science, it's gas lab fiction instead of steampunk. I'm like, these days, we do not split hairs, which is like, come in, do you play with time and history and the 19th century? Welcome. So good. Yeah. And you talked a little bit about your background, your character, and wanting to represent school teachers and people working, and I love your story and details about the finishing school for girls who need to be finished. So good. Does that reflect any of your modern life, or was that sort of inspired by some books you were reading, or what brought you to that
Not
place?
my motto. I actually wanted to be a teacher once upon a time, but very, very long story, that didn't work out. So I'm a retired nurse. And I did a lot of teaching as a nurse, as you can imagine.
Mhm.
And I just thought, I like teaching. I think I'm pretty good at it. I segued eventually into IT, medical IT, and I did a lot of teaching there. So I would have classes anywhere from one-on-one to 250, 300 people in a ballroom. And I thought, what can I make a character out of? And the first thing I wanted to find was a name. And I'm thinking Hyacinth and Lotus and Peony. No. Heavens to Murgatroyd came first, and then Heavens to Betsy. So I said, call me Miss Betsy.
I love it so much. Heavens to Murgatroyd is one of my favorite misnomes, because I do have a sciences background, but it's social sciences, and so I studied linguistics, and it's one of those interesting phrases where the etymology is absolutely lost to time.
Mm-hmm.
There's lots of debates about where it came from, but no firm story. But it's still one of my favorites, and it doesn't get used that much anymore.
It's just fun to say.
Yes.
It just rolls off the tongue.
Mhm.
But that's where my persona came from. And I shouldn't say anything because I'll jinx it and I actually won't get it done. I am in the throes of, I have concepts of a plan, if you will.
I think we've all been there.
Yeah.
100%, yes.
A children's steampunk book about the adventures of Hansel and Kettle.
Oh my gosh,
And his
I love
mad
that.
steam kettle. And then one about the Heavens to Murgatroyd finishing school. I have, it's all locked up in here, but I know a good publisher. His name is David Summers.
I would love to read those books, just from the little snippet that you've said.
Some incentive to get it down on paper.
And by the by, we do still have book club. It has changed by necessity. So when the pandemic happened, we could no longer meet in person. And my dear chum and I, Bill Barton, who's also an author, we started the virtual book club in April of 2020. We call it the temporal textual talks, because I'm a hussy for names. And if it can be too much, I'm like, yes, that's it. So mostly we refer to it just as book club. But we meet every month, and we talk about so many books, but we especially love to feature independent books by independent small press authors. And David is a favorite guest. David Lee Summers is an amazing steampunk author. So wonderful, such a kind human. And Hatteras Press is a great place to find steampunk reads. But I absolutely recommend his fantastic books. And starting with Owl Dance. I knew I was going to remember the title. So such a great book. Which gets me to, so I'm I'm chatty, but I'd like to throw a question out so we could all chat about it. So that gets me to you, like, what is like a book you would recommend to somebody who's just getting started in steampunk to help them find a little inspiration? I'm going to go last because I clearly have an advantage. I've been hosting book club for like a million years. Mathematica, Sarah, will you pass your microphone down when we're done? And
Sure.
so we can all be heard very well.
Yes, of course. So, steampunk book that gives you some inspiration. Oh gosh. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is the Gail Carriger books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I feel like that's a bit of a cop-out because she's such a fabulous author.
You go first, so you get to claim Gail.
All right. I mean, Gail Carriger is one of my favorite steampunk authors. And I've read several of her books. I haven't read all of them yet. They're on my to-read list. But they're fantastic. The Custard Protocol series is one of my favorites because one of the characters is a lioness and embodies a cat so beautifully, and it's hysterical.
She loves tassels.
Yes, she does, and it's great. Oh gosh, I've read a bunch of other ones, and the authors or the titles are not coming to mind at the moment.
That's all right.
But there are so many good steampunk books out there.
But Prudence is the first book in the Custard Protocol, and it follows the Parasol Protectorate books that start with Solus. You don't have to read them after the Parasol Protectorate. You can read them on their own. But I do think that they build on the Parasol Protectorate. So
yes,
reading those first can be really nice.
Oh gosh, we've already talked about a couple. I mean, I'm a big fan of anything that comes through. Unfortunately, I don't have a whole lot of time to read. I know it's very sad, it's tragic, but I don't have a whole lot of time to read because I'm busy doing other shenanigans. But I love Robert's book, Peabody Manor.
Yeah,
that's one of my favorite. I mean, it's just full of humor, and the characters are so well written, and honestly, David's books are amazing. I love the fact that we have so many of these great authors that are in like our universe and we know them, and I love that. That's also what I love about book club, is that now that you've kind of done this virtual one, you can, even if the authors are living in a different city or they're not in the state, you can have them on virtually and you can talk with the author. And I think that's a very unique thing you can do for a book club, where you can invite them in, and then they can talk to you about their ideas and what they came in. So then not only are you having this wonderful book club about this wonderful book and how you enjoyed it and what parts you liked, but then you actually have the author there who can be like, well, yeah, that's where I came up with the idea, or my inspiration was this. But I love Robert's books, and I love Bill's, and I love David's. I just think they're great. And it's really kind of a unique experience where you can be like, I think it's one of those that you think of the authors and you think like they're just so far away and unapproachable, and you're these like, superstars, and then you read and you're amazing. Not only are you a great author, but you're a delightful person. And it's like, I really like talking to you, and not just about books.
That has been a cool experience.
That has been a really cool experience. Thank you. Yeah, let me get this one.
There are several. The first one that comes to mind, I adore Jim Butcher.
Oh,
The Dresden Files, one of my all-time favorites. But he wrote a wonderful steampunk book called The Aeronaut's Windlass. That thing came out about 9 years ago, and I have been waiting on pins and needles. The sequel comes out October 1st.
I was going to say, I think it's either out or it's coming out soon.
It's October 1st. I have it on pre-order from Amazon. It's called The Olympian Affair. So I'm rereading the first one again in preparation. And he's a wonderful author anyway. He's got such a great imagination, wonderful sense of humor. The stuff in there, things that shouldn't be funny are really funny. Yes, Raoul the talking cat. Oh my gosh. You know, and there's mystery and there's airships and you know, everything steampunk, along with some of the fantasy elements that I just love. Another one that I know the book club did not long ago was R.F. Kuang's Babel.
Yes.
That is a really interesting book. If you like a quick, fast read, it's not going to be for you because it's very dense, it's very wordy, but it's super interesting. Really great premise, and I would recommend that. As you know, as I say, if you don't want to have something that you finish in an evening, grab that one, and that will give you a good taste of steampunk and Victorian as well.
Yes, and the prose, just gorgeous.
Oh, she's a wonderful author. Her words are amazing. She really evokes feelings in you. You feel like you're right there with the characters.
Absolutely. I do recommend having tissues or a handkerchief nearby because it is gorgeous and intense and long, and like there were definitely some moments that I was crying.
Mm-hmm.
That was absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, just beautiful. So yeah, that would be mine, and I will pass this over to you.
Okay.
If you like, you can just hold it. That's what I should do.
I'll do so. Not here. Okay. My favorite steampunk sources still are Jules Verne and H.G. Wells. Jules Verne is just such a spectacular storyteller. And whenever I think of steampunk, I always think of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Yes.
Because it was such a great story and tragic characters, the whole works. But it was such a great thing. And From the Earth to the Moon and all his other stories. And I really like H.G. Wells too, because he was kind of a futurist, maybe one of the first who really saw into the future. And The War of the Worlds is just this great, every time somebody makes a movie out of that, I have to see it. And you can see ones that are the original story that was the turn of the century, and the George Powell production, and the modern one. They're all the same story, but told different ways. And but I really like the old ones. And one of my favorite things is musical. There was a version of the War of the Worlds done by a guy named Jeff Wayne in the mid-70s. It's called Jeff Wayne's musical version of the War of the Worlds, and it's kind of a rock basis, but it's told as from the Victorian era, and it's got some very good people in it. But Richard Burton is the narrator, and so it's a fabulous thing. If you ever get a chance to listen to that, it's great. And there's a book that was published to go with it, the pamphlet that fits with the record, that is steampunk right down to its toes. So if you ever get a chance to that, Jeff Wayne's musical version of the War of the Worlds, it's a really good thing.
We into a stage show in London, and it was meant to be produced, I think, for about 6 months. I may be wrong. You can look it up on the internet, but it is still running years later. And it's a stage production. And as he said, with Richard Burton as the narrator, he's reading from the book itself. And yet the music just fits in with it. Justin Hayward from Moody Blues does some of the main vocals. Amazing music. If you haven't heard it, you've got to check it out. It's wonderful.
I didn't want to do that. That's so cool. I'm glad we haven't recorded because I can go back to the record and be like, right.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, you can still buy it on CD. And as he said, the little booklet comes with it, so you can follow along, words to the songs and everything. We've listened to it, I don't know how many times. It's amazing. It's long. It's what, a 3 CD set, I think, or 4, something like that.
No, it's only 2 CDs, I
Is
think.
it?
Yeah.
It packs a lot into it. But yeah, I recommend that to anybody.
And there's still little bits in it that still creep me out a little bit. So it's still.
Wow, this is amazing. I love this. Well, so to move back from into I'm listen. I've been hosting the club for a long time. I have so many suggestions. If you find me and then you're like, I like this sort of thing. What should I read? I probably have a recommendation for you. And I routinely post like lists of things. I just did one for stuff in September. I'll put one out for October for some sort of spooky steampunk things. But I am a huge listen. You already got Gail. You got Robert. These are my favorite people. But I have to absolutely promote P. Jelly Clark so much. I love everything he's written. He's such a gifted storyteller, and his characters are always so engaging. But if you are going to get started with him, I definitely recommend Black God's Drums. It's set in New Orleans, and it reaches into the Caribbean. It deals with a lot of history around Haiti and the break from France and all of that. But it proposes what happens if it worked out for them much better even than it did. And the French were even more stunning. Great, well done, Haiti. And it's just such a stunning read. It's also wonderful for young adults. So it's one of those things where as an adult, I found it very engaging and wonderful and just a delightful read. But I could give it to like someone in middle school or high school if I wanted to get them into steampunk, which I think is fantastic. To be able to hand off such a wonderful writer who's so skilled to a young person to get them excited about history and science fiction and steampunk all in one novel. What a gift. Yeah, so that would be my recommendation. So, but we are coming close to our time to start thinking about wrapping up. So before we wrap up, and I encourage you to participate in some of our upcoming shenanigans, I just wanted to ask everybody, do you have a recommendation for a piece of advice you would give to someone who's just getting started on their steampunk adventure?
Yes. A big thing that helped me was getting involved. Like honestly, getting involved in Tucson Steampunk, and maybe not getting on the board right away, but just going and helping. Hey, I think it was one of the Dickens teams.
It was like the second or third one.
Yeah, I just kind of popped in and be like, hey, do you guys need a volunteer for something? I'm just kind of here, and would you like some help? And then it was like, yes, and you will stay forever. and that's okay. Honestly, that's my jam. I also loved volunteering with the Wawa WestCon. That was great, helping out with that convention and seeing how much it's grown and getting kind of like to see the behind the scenes, but then it also helps you to get to know people. And you start to know, so then you see people and you're like, oh, hey, I volunteered with them, or hey, I know them, they're really cool people. And I think it kind of helps you, then people recognize you and getting involved. And I think it helps because then you kind of almost feel like you have purchased, or you have like a sense of that community. This is now my community, and I want it to excel, and I want it to flourish. And so by contributing and being there, I think it really helps, because then it invites you to want to do more. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons why we love having meet and greets and tutorials, and then having not so much large events, but smaller events that are more personal, because then people can get to know each other. And sometimes in a very large scale event, it's really hard to get to know people and meet people. I know that Dickens in its infancy was very much like that. People would sit at the table, didn't know each other, they get to know each other. But as it progressed, it was more folks all sitting at the table already knew each other. So I think sometimes at certain points with Dickens, it got a little hard for newcomers to feel like that was a good thing. And so as we move forward, I'm sure we'll come up with different things to kind of help that, to help people do it. So long-winded, get involved and help be a part of be one of us.
All right. So I'm going to hand that off to you because I have one already. Yeah. So I kind of dove off the deep end, or into the deep end, when I first got involved with steampunk. When I had kind of dabbled with different forms of the community, whether it be through books or artwork, things like that. But I didn't actually get involved with the community until joining your team a couple years ago. And then it's like, oh, hey, you're part of the team. You're on stage at Wild West Con. And like helping out you, of course, are the main folks on stage, but I'm running up and down, like delivering things and things like that. So like I said, I kind of jumped into the deep end, but something I would say is explore. Find some local events, and like if you enjoy books, look into see if like, hey, is there a book club? If you enjoy artwork, look to see what local makers are nearby. Ask them questions. That's actually how I got to know Madame Askew. Was I was wanting to learn about corsetry and started pestering you with questions, and you were delightful and were willing to put up with my endless questions, and then that turned into an actual friendship. But if there's a local steampunk convention or one that's nearby, go check it out. You don't have to be in costume. You can if you want to be, but you don't have to be. Check out some of the panels, talk to some of the makers, check out the vendor hall, like go see what parts of steampunk bring you the most joy, because not everyone is interested in the same aspects of steampunk, and that's okay. In fact, that's actually kind of awesome. That's how we get such a vibrant community with so much diversity, is just go explore and see what parts of it bring you joy. And if you are at a convention and you see any of us, like come up to us and ask like, hey, what do you think is going on that might be interesting? Do you have recommendations for me to check out? I can almost guarantee we will have suggestions for you, and we will happily point you in the direction of like, hey, it sounds like you're interested in this kind of thing. Go check out this panel, or like go talk to this person. They're awesome. They can tell you all sorts of things that I think you will find interesting. So that would be my suggestion.
I think for me, I would say don't be afraid. Don't
That
be
too.
afraid to look silly. Don't be afraid to have fun. Don't be afraid to walk up and talk to people. Just